Hello humans and other species, I'm Batsy and welcome to Skull Island, a collaborative series where I build your suggestions and ideas, with the goal of working together to achieve the coolest base ever. In previous episodes we made a quarry, making use of mechanical bearings for decorations. We also made a broadcasting station from where we edit and upload all our videos, which includes a really cool spinning antenna. And more recently, we made ourselves a small witch town, designed to hide an entire brewing setup underneath. For today's episode, and as voted for you all, we will be making a universal tree farm with some sort of tree trunk to decorate it all. But before we get into that, I did some changes between episodes. I've visited the idea of the forest again, and I think this time I managed to make something substantially better. I think that one of the biggest issues I had with it is that I started with the leaves. Instead of placing some sparse leaves here and there, I ended up having a thick blob that it was honestly looking pretty bad. So what I did this time around is to add many of these fences first, spreading them around the forest. Then I added a few of the brightest leaves at the very top, not many of them, just a few on top of every fence. That way, we can see from above how we ended up with many holes along the trees. Then I took a darker leaf and started adding those at the bottom, trying to make it look like it has a downwards motion due to gravity. I think now the leaves look a bit more natural overall. And looking at the top of it, even from a closed angle, it still looks a whole lot better. I'm not sure exactly how to explain it, but it doesn't look as dense and fake anymore. The holes are really making a difference here. They are still not the best trees in the world, that's for sure, but I'm much happier with how those look right now. I'm very pleased with this. And trees don't end here. Today, we are going to be working on a universal tree farm, so we gotta check how to make one of those. If this world is kind of weird, is because we are on a stripped-down version of the server. There is barely any mods here, so many blocks are currently missing. But this world has access to 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬, and it's what I will be using to try and make a tree trunk for the farm. I guess I should start by explaining what even is the plan. This is a tree farm made by 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬. It's a fairly conventional setup with a really cool twist, but this is essentially the most simple way of farming trees. We have a contraption moving back and forth that will both chop down the trees and replant the saplings. 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 made it look more unique by spreading the saplings around and farming all of the different woods at the same time, which I think it's a fantastic idea. But the problem is that these farms tend to be larger, and we don't have a whole lot of room on the island, so we need to find a more compact way of going about it. And that's where the industrial area comes into play. We have endless supply of bone meal thanks to that lovely little farm over there. Well, we can't really see the farm right now. It's the fishing farm located underwater. My idea is that if we use bone meal to grow the trees, then we only need at most a 2x2 to grow the thickest trees, and maybe some extra room for the mangrove roots. I assume those will be the widest ones. So the plan is to build some sort of thick tree trunk. Something wide enough that it can grow trees in the middle, and figure out the rest from there. Which sounds like a bad idea, but I honestly don't know how to properly set up the masks and how to make the trunk without breaking everything in the process. So I think I will be doing this step first, which will hopefully don't mess up things too much. And then just figure out how to fit it all inside. We honestly just want to grow a single tree at a time. I'm sure that won't be any hard to do later on. Alright, that's a good enough plan. Let's get to building already. Yeah. That's it. That's the tree trunk. Of course, this is not done yet. I will be adding a lot more detail later on. But the general shape is pretty much there, I would say. I think it's going to be easier for me to continue this on the normal creative world. For bigger things, I'm starting to love 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐬, but for smaller stuff like this, I get a bit confused and overwhelmed. I'm happy with how this looks though. I think it's a really nice foundation. Alrighty, now yes, we are on the normal creative world. Let's finish up this thing and see if this makes for a much cooler time-lapse.
I'm living right here and now, and I don't wanna miss out. Is this what life's all about? The world is calling and I'm listening. Yeah, I'm listening. I feel the freedom inside. Come on, let's go for a ride. I finally opened my eyes and I can see it so clearly. So clearly. Life is but a dream. And isn't it amazing? Oh, life can be amazing. Oh, I feel my heartbeat racing. I'll fly, soaring ever higher. I can light my inner fire, and then we'll see what happens now. What happens now? And then we'll see what happens now. What happens now? Watch what happens now.
And here we have it. It looks nice, doesn't it? I think it honestly looks fantastic. I really like it. And sure, some parts aren't super realistic, but you know, we do our best. I think the detail of adding a brighter wood on the edges was really good. It really gives the impression that the jungle wood is like the tree bark or something. I love this detail. And the jungle wood looks fantastic too. I tried with a few different woods, but I think this specific texture from 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 is just incredible. It's honestly better than even spruce for buildings. It contrasts so well with the red of the mushrooms and all of the vegetation that we added around it. It honestly all looks fantastic to me. I love it. The only thing that I'm not convinced about is this kind of warehouse. I do like how it looks. I like the textures I used and all of that. It's just that it doesn't look like it fits that well, if that makes sense. The idea behind it was that ideally, we don't want to fly into the tree farm to gather the wood, especially if the farm is actively running. So this is meant as the access point for the storage system. The idea is good, and the build by itself looks alright. I just don't think it fits with the tree trunk that well. But it could be just me. Maybe it doesn't look that bad. That said, there is still a gap until the broadcast station, so I might add some trees or something to fill it up. Which, speaking of trees, I have done a few new ones that I'm proud of. I'm using the same idea as before, with fences as the thin trees and just some sparse leaves to cover the top. Which I'm really enjoying, to be honest. I think I might continue with this idea for the entire island. This time though, I have also added some roots and fences at the top to imitate some branches that don't have leaves. I was thinking in my head that sometimes trees aren't fully covered by leaves. Sometimes there are just random branches around. I wanted to give that idea a try, and I honestly think I quite like it. I'm very pleased with how they look. I added few to test it out, but I guess I should extend it all the way to the water wheels. Maybe leaving all this vegetation where it is, and simply adding a line of trees on top. Because this section won't have anything else in it. We will have to bridge the gap between builds with plants and decorations. Which I guess it also counts for this small part. I should probably add a few trees in here too. How does it look from the other side? To be honest, I think it already looks pretty good from this side. I think that if we cover the back with trees, the current vegetation might very well be enough. Yeah, it kinda gives a lot more depth to it, don't you think? So maybe I should do the same here. Add the trees at the back and maybe leave the front with nothing. See if that gives the build more depth. Alright, I kinda like that idea. We gonna try that if we have the time. Otherwise, I might do it between episodes. What we are missing now is to fill up this trunk with a tree farm. Time to pop into creative and figure out how we want to go about this universal farm. There are a few things that I'm currently thinking about for this farm. For example, to grow crimson and warped woods, we do need to farm the fungus things. And farming those is kinda useful to get bone meal anyway, so maybe we can hit 2 birds with 1 stone. We wanted to grow the trees with bone meal, and we also need the same bone meal to grow the fungus. Maybe we can make it all be self-sustaining. I have been spamming some bone meal, and it looks like it's spreading 2 blocks around the center. That's probably enough. It's not bad for us if this is compact. My idea was to mix both types of psyllium, but it looks like the 1U bone meal takes priority over what plants show up, so maybe having both of them together will be good enough. This is still fairly small anyway. We shouldn't have problems fitting this in the farm. Actually, scratch that idea. I came up with something better. We will be combining both after all. Never mind that idea. My thought was that we could use the same dispenser to bone meal it every time it moves back and forth, but it obviously never goes out of contraption mode for this to work. We would need to make it stop every time, which at that point it might be easier to simply use a minecart. And never mind again, scratch the previous scratch. This is actually pretty simple. I've just added a short pulse to stop the gantry every time it reaches one side, which is enough for the bone meal to work. You can also notice how it's alternating between both of the types of nether plants, which is fantastic. Now we need a system to flush all of this, because there's a ton of plants standing here with no hope of being picked up. What? Of course! The backpack was picking them up. I was so confused for a moment. I was going to use a complicated timed redstone circuit to use water to flush out the items. But encased fans seem to do the trick somewhat. They don't seem to work very fast though. Oh yeah, now we are talking. This is so much better. Items get instantly blown away. And these chutes are being so useful right now. Let's help them out a little bit. Alright, this isn't too bad. We probably want to add a lot more glass all around to handle the items, but I mean, this is as simple as it gets really. I completely surrounded it with glass, and now it doesn't seem to leak items anymore. We'll have to test it further, but I believe we are ready for the next step, which is basically converting all of these side products into bone meal. We only want to keep the fungus after all. And sure enough, it was as easy as just adding a few composters. Making bone meal is always rather simple. We seem to have a decent amount in the vault. I want to check how many stacks are these to compare it with how much was initially here. Okay, that's not too bad. 5.5 stacks. It's not sustaining itself, that's for sure. There was 9 stacks originally, so we lost some in the process. But to be fair, we still have 14,000 blocks of bone meal, and there are like 40,000 more blocks back in the industrial area. We probably don't need any more bone meal generation. We are essentially getting half of our bone meal back with this setup. I think this is plenty good for our needs. Let's have it running again. I want to see if these 4 composters are enough. They do seem to be enough. It's not backing up too much for now. The hoppers aren't that full either. I'm going to add a couple more of these just to be fully sure, since we do have the space anyway. I imagine that 6 should be more than enough, and it will give the option to connect other things into this setup too. I remember that the warp leaves do drop too, so maybe we need to also process them later on. I have adjusted this redstone a little bit. It's basically the same thing. I just adjusted it so it doesn't go over the gantry. I don't want to be taking more room than it's necessary. I guess I can connect it up there later on, maybe changing those belts for a chain drive or something. But anyway, I have added a few more things in here. So in order to get the propa thingies, we need to bone meal the leaves. How are they called actually? Propagules, very easy name to remember. Alright, so to get them, we bone meal these leaves. Like so. That should generate a little thing underneath. There, can you see it? These little thing. We need to bone meal that too for it to grow. And now we have a full-grown propa thingy. So what we're doing basically is to have a dispenser to bone meal the top leaves and another one underneath to make the thingies grow. Very easy, very simple. It's using the same bone meal line as before, so that's quite convenient. And to break it, well, I'm kind of a genius, you see. I used a single pulse, so instead of constantly firing the piston, it only fires every so often. That's it actually. Of course I could have this running in the first place. It's quite self-explanatory of what's going on. It's timed so it never breaks the thingies before they grow. That's all I did. The top dispenser does consume a lot of bone meal though. While the thingies are growing, The top dispenser is still wasting bone meal on the leaves because I didn't bother to make 2 circuits for it. So it's basically chewing through the bone meal for no reason. But that's alright, we have a lot of bone meal, and I never said I was a genius anyway. Well, I'm kind of a genius, you see. Kind of a genius. The rest of the saplings will get dropped by the farm itself. Which, to be fair, I'm not sure if propa thingies will drop too. Maybe that section is really useless. But regardless, all we need to do now is figure out how to fit this thing in place and, well, the rest of the tree farm, of course. At the end, I finished the design down here. I was thinking that in order to make it fit in the space we have, we gonna need to make some weird L shape and potentially tweak many of the current components. So I thought I will just finish it here, and I will be sharing this schematic in my Ko-fi page, in case any supporter wants to try it out. Adjusting the shape to make it fit shouldn't be too complicated anyway. So what additions I have done? The first and most simple one is that I've added a way to convert bone blocks into bone meal. We ideally want to store bone blocks instead. So we can dump the blocks in here and it should feed the system. Then I added a big vault where the logs go. I recommend adding some depots with funnels for each one of the logs or something like that. That's entirely up to you all on how you do it. Now the tree chopping system. It's a bit more complicated than it needs to be honest, and for no real gain. In fact, if you need wood, just make a normal tree farm with my carts. You're gonna be done in 5 minutes and get more wood. But if you really insist on being silly, then we should start with this funnel. We make sure that the funnel is powered off by the lever. Then we take the filter and we select which of the saplings we want to use. We only want to have one single sapling on the filter, otherwise things will get messy. Having done that, we come here and adjust the shoots according to the tree we have selected. We are doing spruce trees now, which can be done in a 2x2. If the tree was oak, we would need a single one, so we should remove the excess shoots. It's kind of tedious to set it all up, but this is meant to run for a long time, so we just need to do this every now and then. In our current example, we'd use a 2x2, so we will leave it as it is. Now we can unlock the funnel and let the saplings go through. The system is already loaded, so we don't need to worry about it right now. As for chopping the trees, I have added a clock here so it alternates between chopping trees and growing trees. Why I did that? Honestly, no idea. It doesn't really feel that necessary. But anyway, we can flick this lever and it should start to do some stuff. It doesn't look super fast, but to be honest, a single hour of this running, we are still gonna get more wood than we realistically need. But yeah, that's about it for the farm. It dumps the saplings back into the sapling vault, which is useful, and I think that's all. One thing I will say though, this is a fun farm to make. If your goal is to have fun building something with Create and Redstone, this is a pretty neat one. There are some funny mechanics going on, and it requires a bit of puzzle solving. As for effectiveness and accessibility, yeah, this is a pretty bad farm. We are going to produce a lot of wood with it, don't get me wrong. But this is not noob-friendly. It's likely that things will go wrong, and we will have to fix stuff here and there. If you don't enjoy that kind of gameplay, then you might be better off with a simple minecart farm. Though if you do enjoy the technical aspect, then by all means, go try this farm. I had a lot of fun building this. Now it's time for me to grab this design and figure out how to even fit it in the current space we have on the server. I'm sure it won't be too hard, hopefully. And sure enough, it wasn't too hard. The bottom part is about the same. It's just the connection to this platform that it's a whole lot more messy. I'm not joking, there are belts and random things all over the place. It's quite hideous to look at. But in theory, it should work out as well as it was before. And if you don't pay too much attention, it honestly doesn't look too bad as a whole. But what are we waiting for? Let's find out if I messed this up or not. I did added an access ladder so we can adjust all of the stuff, which I guarantee we gonna need to use frequently. We dump a whole lot of bone meal into it. And we should be good to start the fungus farm. Awesome. It actually looks pretty cool while that runs. Now we filter it to only use the warped fungus. And we set it to one single shoot. I think that should be all. Here goes nothing. Alright, it's not that bad. Not the biggest trees, but it seems to be doing fine so far. I know that warp trees can grow from tiny to absolutely massive. I was hoping that more of them would grow huge. My thought was that we should be able to see the biggest trees from here, poking out of the tree trunk. But I guess once we start farming jungle and spruce, we should be able to see them. Those do grow pretty big. Holy smokies, this one is huge. I bet we can see it from the outside. Unfortunate, I was too slow. At least the farm is working well though. I was expecting things to break out more often. I wonder how much wood we are making anyway, because we're getting unlucky with those trees. Okay, it's not too bad. That's a solid amount of logs for a few minutes of a farm. And look at all of these leaves though. I bet if we recycle them all into the composters, we're gonna get a lot more bone meal than we are using right now. But that's a thought for future, Batsy, because I'm afraid this is the end of this episode. I hope the humans had some fun with this over-engineered terrible farm. Let me know in the comments if you are crazy like me and plan on doing a similar one. And while you are down there, do make sure to vote on what you want to see next episode and suggestions to be added to the list. I won't be uploading next week because I will be in a convention pretty much all week, but I will be back for the week after that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.